Welcome to my monthly free group coaching call. And I think some of you who read my newsletter know that I'm going to take June, July, and August off, so I won't be doing these calls during the summer. I do have one public appearance that's going to happen on July 27th at noon Pacific time, I think it is. It's going to be on the STOA. And I probably will send a note out to my list about that. It's going to be on the developmental stages, or the developmental tasks, I should say, the developmental tasks of the final stage of life. So some of you have been following me as I go into my, what I'm calling the final stage of life. So I'm just alerting you to that. It's going to be a 2-hour program. And it will grow out of the fact that over the next 3 months, starting in June, I'm going to be writing a memoir. And so I'm going to be digging deeply into reflecting on my life, making sense of what I've learned, how it's been for me. I think I just want to see what happens, whether it gets published widely as a memoir, as a book, I'm not sure. But I'm just sharing that with all of you because some of you have been reading my updates in my newsletter. And thank you for that. Thank you for being my loyal subscribers. So with that, I'll get into today's topic, which is self-compassion. And if we just feel into the word self-compassion, how are you at giving yourself tenderness when you feel hurt, upset, afraid, that sort of thing? And for most of us, the answer to that partly depends on how well we were co-regulated when we were little. See, we all were little at one time, and most of the people around us were big. And we took our cues from the big people about what was okay and what was not okay, what was okay in ourselves and not okay in ourselves. So a lot of parents, let me say what co-regulation means. It means when the child is upset or afraid, it's like when you go run into mommy, does mommy hold you and say, "Oh, yes, I feel you. It's okay to feel this." It's that kind of thing. It's like it's okay to feel your feelings, even if they're upset type feelings. So most parents nowadays know to do something like that, but they still, if the child doesn't calm down right away, the parent gets anxious. So you probably don't have memories of the earliest times when you went to a big person, whether it was a parent or somebody else, you went to a big person and tried to get comfort. Maybe you never even did. And I'm going to be asking some questions of the group around some of your early experiences around being held in your feelings. But that self-compassion means being able to do that parenting for yourself. But see, a lot of what some of us are handicapped with is the anxiety that came off the parent, or the impatience, or even the anger that came off the parent when we didn't get consoled in a timely manner because, the parent had a meeting or the parent had their own needs. So a lot of us get the message that our upset feelings are bad or wrong. And so there's no place for those. If we don't get co-regulated, held and reassured when we're upset, when we're young, we don't have an easy template to go back to that says, oh, you can be upset, and then that can calm down. Somebody showed me how to do that. So that part of your developmental life, that early development, is something that we can go back and redo. Most people alive today are, first of all, the environment is I think, getting more and more stressful for people. Change is happening faster and faster. In my opinion, the economy is much tougher now than it was when I was growing up. Like, I could afford to buy a house when I was 25 years old. How many people can save up that much money now when they're 25 years old? I mean, the economy is just so different. And I just feel for the people growing up in these times. But back to the work. So we all need a lot of self-healing. I think if we can take on a more self-compassionate stance for ourselves, we can offer that to others. My view of what we're trying to create here in this like getting real community is the world as helping each other heal. Imagine that. Imagine that, instead of being scared of each other. So that's the world that this community is trying to help create. But it starts with ourselves. So today we're going to be looking at what happened in your childhood, and then how can you take adult relationships and adult interactions as the beginning point of what I call compassionate self-inquiry, which is basically a self-compassion practice that once you learn it, I encourage you to use it liberally for the rest of your lives. So we're going to be practicing that together. I'm going to be guiding you through that. I won't be asking for a volunteer in this. I'll be guiding the whole group at once. So first, a little bit more about why it's important to learn to develop self-compassion. As I said, it's a self-healing practice, because many of us did miss those early opportunities, like in the very first year, let's say, first year of life, and most of us don't have much memory of what happened then. But the opportunity for our neural wiring to be strong and developed as much as it could be developed at age 1. Many of us have neural wiring that didn't get complete, and it's still kind of incomplete. And I'll tell you what the importance of that neural wiring is in a second. But it did not get complete, and that's kind of like a handicap that you're carrying around your whole life, because it's kind of like something didn't get complete back there. And so I'm just taking it from a neurobiology angle at this moment, and then we'll look at it more from a feeling angle. But children's neural wiring, or infants' neural wiring, is still developing when they're born. It's still developing at least until 6 months of age. And the importance of that is, it's the kind of thing where the two parts of your brain, or the part of your brain, not really the right and left side of your brain, I'm making it look like that, but the higher and lower parts of your brain can communicate with each other. So the higher part of your brain is called the prefrontal cortex. And that's the part of your brain that can kind of see the big picture. And, okay, not so much at 6 months of age, but that development, that ability for the wiring from the prefrontal cortex to actually connect to the more emotion-centered, the place where fears reside, that would be like the amygdala part of the brain, which is in the middle of the brain. That's a more primitive part of the brain. We need strong wiring between the part of the brain that says, this is not maybe a life-threatening situation. Oh, like, let's wait and see. Let's wait another couple of seconds and see what happens, rather than just going into fight, flight, freeze immediately, going into like screaming immediately. So even at the very earliest ages, there is either stronger or weaker ability to, in a sense, have yourself say, okay, it may not be a 4-alarm fire. It may not be a tiger in the room. This may be something that if you just kind of like take another few seconds, you'll see what it is. So the quick reactivity is what the amygdala does. And the amygdala is the survival alarm system in the brain that reacts to almost everything that looks like it could be dangerous. It reacts as if it is dangerous. So the ability to assess danger is and assess it accurately is beginning to develop and is still developing in those early moments and months of life. So but we can heal those faulty brain circuits even at this adult age by moving the energy that's stuck down there, by giving it some tenderness and some space to be seen and felt. It's almost like you can give yourself what your parent didn't give yourself. But it's some work. Okay. And so that's the compassionate self-inquiry practice that is the work. So I want to put up on the screen now something that will help us begin perhaps to come to terms with what did go on in our own childhoods. So let me put the screen share up and then I'll describe it a little bit more. So these are 5 basic developmental needs that all children have in order to grow up securely attached. And very few of us got all of these needs met. I'll go through them in a minute. But just because we didn't get them all met doesn't mean that we can't meet them now in a certain way. So it's sort of like in life, in order to get your needs met and therefore heal any faulty ideas about whether you're worthy of getting your needs met or whether the universe is friendly or not. Because, Einstein's famous quote is the basic question for a person in life that kind of determines your happiness or not is your answer to the question, is the universe friendly? And the type of universe you had when you were tiny gives you at least your sort of gut level answer to this question. And this is your universe. You and your parent figure is your early universe. Was that universe friendly or not? So here's the basic needs. And as I go through and describe each of these needs, my intent here is to get you a little bit now into reflecting on what might have happened. We don't know for sure what happened in the first year of life, perhaps, but knowing what happened after that, you can kind of guess what happened during the first year, or knowing what your early circumstances were. And we're not trying to blame the parents here because the parents had their own pressures. Be nice if parents were able to give us all these things, but that's not the way reality is. They aren't schooled in how to do all this. So here we are, we're sort of halfway on our own as soon as we're born. And each need can either be met by the environment, like by somebody else. And usually as we go through life, we ask for things. We ask for hugs, we ask for attention. And then if that's not available, if environmental support is not available, then we need to be okay with moving to self-support. We all need to be self-supporting because, as I said earlier, to some degree, we're all kind of on our own here. I mean, that's just the nature of being alive. It would be so nice if there was enough environmental support at every step of the way for you to develop optimally. And some of us did have that, but it's usually a continuum. We had a little more or a little less than optimum. So before we go into our kind of self-reflection, I want to first like give you a bit of rationale that I think it's very, very important to come to terms with what actually happened to you in your life. That's part of when I talk about the developmental tasks of the final stage of life, coming to terms with everything that's happened, things that were out of your control, but they did happen. So this is like your life. So first, like, see if you can get the attitude that I'm doing an important, courageous thing here for my development by beginning to come to terms with some of the painful things that really did happen and face them. Just face them without like it shouldn't have happened. Certainly you could say certain things shouldn't have happened, but what we're doing right now is it did happen. And what do you feel about it? Okay, you feel anger, you feel resentment, you feel gypped, or maybe you feel grateful. You feel like, geez, I was one of the lucky ones. How did I get so lucky? Coming to terms with that is an act of becoming a mature person. And then where you have the deficits, being able to hold yourself in compassion. And I think of it as developing your own inner good mother or your good nurturer. That's kind of a foreign concept to some people, but probably most of you have some idea about this anyway. So the idea here is, as we go through this exercise, it's going to be it's a thinking exercise, but feelings will come up. When I say thinking, I'm going to be asking you to recall things. So you'll recall things, but you'll probably have some feelings. So let's right now intend to be gentle and tender with the feelings that come up. So we all need protection. That's the first one. So do you have a feeling or a sense that you were protected from physical and psychological harm? That's what that means. We need safety. We need to not have our parents protect us from outside aggressions or from seeing or hearing horrible things that our nervous system's not ready to handle yet. Do you imagine, do you remember a feeling of being protected as a little person? Could you go to somebody, either a parent figure or another adult? Because if you could go to somebody when you were upset, that gives a sense that, okay, maybe you felt safe with somebody. Or with regard to protection, maybe you had a scary parent. So you felt unprotected. You sort of had to, you had to depend on them, but it was very confusing because you were scared of them too. So if that's in any way your story, just like be soft around that. We're coming to terms with what really happened here. So the next one is loving attention. All of these are a little bit related, but you might have one, you might have been protected, but also not really attended to in a loving way. So loving attention would be the parent wanted to spend time with you. They liked you. Or maybe they would even say, I love you. You're such a great kid. How did I get so lucky to have such a kid like you? No, do you remember any like positive feedback like that? Or was that mostly, were you mostly kind of like wondering, how does anyone feel toward me? Am I any good? Am I lovable? The next one is we all need guidance and encouragement. And what that means is help learning how to do things. So this is more for the like later stages of childhood, like not later, but it's not the first couple of years. It's, aged 3, 4, 5, learning how to throw a ball, learning how to tie your shoe, maybe learning the alphabet. Well, these are some of the things where your parents have to actually guide you and teach you. And if they did guide you and teach you, Were they patient with you? Because little people don't know how to do things right. Did they expect you to be like an adult, or were they patient and kind as they showed you how to do things? So give a little thought to, was there guidance? Did they take the time to really show me? Or was I pretty much trying to figure everything out myself? And as a result, right now, I still feel that sort of lack of grounding underneath myself when I'm doing things. Versus if you had guidance and encouragement, you were also shown and taught that making mistakes is okay. You don't have to be perfect. That's part of healthy guidance and encouragement. Now we come to co-regulation, which I mentioned before, which means when the child is hurting or afraid, they feel like they can go to you. So I mentioned that under protection, you felt protected, but you feel like there's somebody who is there for you when your feelings are kind of confused, chaotic, upset, and you need some help calming yourself and getting regulated again. So, we use terms like regulation, nervous system regulation, self-regulation is when you do this for yourself, when you breathe and calm yourself. Co-regulation is what a parent does for a child or two adults do for each other, which is, oh, honey, do you need a hug? It's that kind of thing. That's co-regulation. And ideally, we need a lot of co-regulation, even as adults. But as I said earlier, sometimes you can't get co-regulation. So you have to learn how to do self-regulation. It's just part of being a mature adult. And finally, we all need help learning to express feelings. Like, did the adults in your world ask you how you were feeling? That would be the first thing. Or if they saw that maybe you weren't so happy, maybe they would give you a word like, oh, are you sad? Are you sad because your little friend is on vacation and you don't have anybody to play with? They kind of helped you have empathy for yourself by showing empathy for you. This is one that hardly any of my audiences got. Whenever I ask for a show of hands on these people, that's one that very few parents in that era, whatever the era is now, because there's a bunch of different ages on this call, but most parents just don't know how to do that. Some of you are parents, so you can look at yourself here too. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share, but I want to just get any comments or feelings that are coming up, any shares. What did you see, if you're willing to share? It's just that hearing from other people somehow begins to get us all in the room. So I'd rather not be the only person talking now. So what came up for you? Scott, what came up for you?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, what came up for me is my brother has a couple kids that are like 1-year-old and 3-year-old, and been watching him parent them and realizing, feeling how we were parented and how he's parenting them. And specifically around the last thing you were talking about when they're upset and how to, it's been really hard to watch him. And he is an exceptionally amazing parent. Like, I am so impressed with him. But to just notice that when his child is upset, and throwing a tantrum, say, I want this, my brother will just basically go emotionless and just say no. He's trying to rationalize with him, say no. And I just watching that, I've been dealing with it myself. like what that brings up for me. And also wanting to, try and say something to him, but then I don't want to be the asshole saying, hey, this is how you should parent your kids. So I realized part of that is, I wasn't taught how to regulate. I don't know how to regulate with him. And he's struggling to regulate with his son. And like, I just want to say to him, all you have to do is just add another step. Just add like oh, you're sad, or oh, you're upset, or like some sort of emotional, like, oh yeah, I'm sorry, you want a cookie. I know you can't have it, but I know that feels bad.
Yeah.
Just that.
I'm so glad you let yourself say the things that you wish your brother would say. I was going to invite you to do that anyway, just to kind of help you get closure on that, but you did it for yourself, Scott. So that's great that you had that instinct. Yeah.
And so if I'm gonna ask for what I want right now. It's like, I want to know, like, how can I'm regulating myself, but frankly, I want to know like how to do it enough that I can talk to him and create that connection with us, and also make that offering suggestion with him and his kids.
Beautiful.
I think it's funny. I think it's funny that I'm afraid I'm going to look like an asshole, because apparently, I don't know, when I say that, it makes me think, does that mean I think giving advice is being an asshole, or maybe, I don't know. I'm wondering what that means about
Well, no, Scott, if you're anything like me, you've had enough experience giving good advice to people and having them resist it and
Very
think
true.
you're the problem. I mean, that's part of life.
Very true.
Most of us have a history of being told to butt out at some point or other. Now, there may be many memories where we were welcomed and our advice was appreciated. But why is it we remember the parts or the times when people told us, shut up, you're an asshole? Now, why is that? But let me answer your question. Which the tool that I'm going to be giving, the compassionate self-inquiry practice that I'm going to be guiding everybody through in a few minutes, that's a piece of my answer, so I won't go completely into it right now. But what I want to say is, you start with your feelings of pain, watching your brother stiffen up and say no, and your nephew is upset. So you start with that image of that scene, and you focus on your own painful feelings. And that's the entry point to self-compassion that will soften you enough and get you to know a little bit more about why this is so upsetting for you in a way that's connected to your brother and connected to your nephew. So when you kind of soften up about your own relationship to being harshly treated or being given empathy, both, then when you go to talk to your brother, you bring more of your own tenderness, your own heart to it, and you're more likely to be heard because there's more of you in the room.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
We'll see. So you'll have to go through this practice and start with the feeling that you just talked about here, witnessing your brother.
I like that.
So
I like that. It's easier for me to say, share with him how I'm feeling.
Yeah. Like when I saw this happen between, you and your kid, I did some inner reflection on why that was kind of triggering for me. And here's what I came up with.
Yeah.
That type of thing. So you start with self-disclosure.
Yeah. Thank you. That's great.
Let me hear from Arthur too, and then we'll move on to the next part of what I want to present. Arthur.
Yeah, so I get the sense that when we were going through that list, that I definitely got the first three things from my parents,
Mhm.
but I'm struggling to recall any kind of evidence or indication of co-regulation or learning to express feelings.
Mhm.
And it's something that, as I've reflected over the years, it's something that I just had to learn by myself, and in some ways, just through like the sheer logic of it. Like I logicked myself
Yeah.
into kind of understanding that in at first in an intellectual way, and then just over time developing those skills by myself. It's not to say that my parents didn't do those things. It's just I can't think of it. Um, and you know, w- in my childhood, kind of had this very an element of a very stereotypical Jewish family where like everything was an argument, but like an argument on the merits, right? It wasn't just, lots of yelling. There was lots of yelling too, but it was an argument on the merits of a thing. And so we would always be arguing about the logic of any particular thing. I wanted to do something, my parents said no, and then we would argue about why that was the case and why, what are the proper standards and what, I mean, it was interesting. And I think in a lot of ways it was actually very helpful developmentally.
Yeah.
But one of the things that ended up getting kind of prohibited in those interactions was how you were feeling about the thing, because that's irrelevant to the logic of the argument. So in some ways, I think that uh, was not helpful for emotional development. And I do remember, with respect to like when I was feeling upset, whether it was anything that had to do with my parents or not, I remember a lot of just like being by myself and figuring out how to self-soothe.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and yeah, so
Well, let me comment, Arthur. It's when I listen to you, I kind of have an inner smile and I say to myself, well, there's the good news and the bad news about growing up in a family where you did the logical argument thing that you just described. The good news, in my opinion, is you learned to speak up for yourself. Okay, it isn't the most effective in adult intimacy situations to just speak from a logic point of view, but something that pains me in seeing people who have so many attachment wounds is somebody will say, no, I don't feel like doing that. And then the other person won't think to kind of talk back and say, oh, well, is there another time, or is there something else you would give me? There's no argument. There's no exchange for so many people. Whereas you learned to hold your ground and say some words. Maybe they weren't the very, most effective words, as they say, to promote connection and intimacy, but you didn't disappear. So that's the really good news. Now, the bad news is kind of what you said and what I alluded to, which is if you come from a more aware feeling place, the other person can feel you more, and they are more, first of all, they feel more safe with you, and they kind of feel more connected to you, so they are more likely to want to give you what you want.
mhm.
So, you learned some of those new strategies, healthier strategies on your own.
And it's interesting in describing that. Of course the doorbell goes off. I'm almost surprised that I didn't end up dismissive avoidant as a result
Mhm.
of that. But I did feel very connected to my parents in a lot of ways. I mean, they were very supportive in a lot of ways, um, and so on. But as far as learning, realizing that I just had to self-soothe in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Anyway,
Well,
that's
let's
a
get into it, because I want to make sure I have time to guide you all. So thanks for those two comments, Scott and Arthur. And some of you heard about Scott's like painful adult interaction. So I'm going to be asking you to recall a painful adult interaction. But first, I want us to like make space inside of ourselves for this tender thing to happen. So I'm going to invite you to get real comfortable as you can where you're seated now, and allow your breathing to be the focus of your attention for a while. And probably close your eyes. That's up to you, but it usually helps because we're going to be putting our attention inwards. So closing your eyes will probably help. And just breathe with me for a few slow, conscious breaths. What we're doing as we breathe is we're opening up a space that's capable of holding more feeling. Breath is supportive of more emotional intensity. Not that I'm going to try to promote emotional intensity in this little compassion exercise, but I do want you to hold the idea that you have the capacity to hold more charge, to hold more emotional pain when you intentionally breathe, get in touch with body sensations with the intent of making space for feelings. So continue to breathe and imagine that you're becoming more of a big, open, curious, nurturing presence. Continue to breathe, opening up, relaxing. It's almost like you feel safer when you're relaxed and open. Not when you're more defended. It's when you're more relaxed and open. It promotes that inner feeling of safety. We could say in consciousness, there is the witness or the presence or the space, the spaciousness. And then there are the contents of consciousness, like the feelings and the thoughts. So that's what we're developing in this exercise. We're developing an inner spaciousness that can allow difficult and also other meaningful kinds of things to come in. We're enhancing our capacity to experience life, whatever it brings. So just by breathing and opening up, you're already doing something wonderful for yourself. And now I'm going to suggest that there may have been something you got in touch with when you did that little children need exercise, like Scott thought of his brother, or maybe take a moment now to think of some adult situation where something painful or frustrating was happening. So I'm going to ask you to bring back a memory of an actual event. And you might not remember all the elements of the event, but let's start by where did this happen and who was with you? So we're talking about an interpersonal, frustrating or painful event at this point. You can do this self-compassion exercise when there's no interpersonal event. You can do it just when you're feeling down someday and that feeling down or feeling depressed or sad. You can just have that feeling be the point of inquiry. So we have a point of inquiry, first of all. We make the space, which is what we just did. Now we have a point of inquiry, which is an event, a feeling. What else happened? You had a feeling, there's somebody else there. Were there any stories that your mind played, like, I'm not being heard, or I'm being criticized, I'm being disrespected? Were there any fear stories like that. So just see what happened, what you felt, what you thought. That's what I'm calling the fear stories, like sentences that played in your mind. Maybe there were body sensations. So we're letting that in, just recalling it, and even doing this by letting in a painful memory with the intent to hold space for it. Just by doing that, that's an act of self-compassion. You're giving yourself something that you may not have gotten enough of in your early life. So you can be holding space now for an event that is a recent, or at least an adult interpersonal event, or something that came out in that exercise that we did, reflecting on childhood. So just take some time now and breathe and see if anything comes in. Maybe you won't get anything, or maybe you'll just get kind of a body sensation that's indicative of some distress, and you don't even know what it's about. So you can focus on that. So continuing to breathe and make space. What I'm going to ask you to do now is think of this person who's being witnessed now, or think of that story, like I'm being criticized. Think of this as your tender part. Let's call it your tender part. Some people might call it the inner child, but it doesn't have to be that. It's just some part that's hurting right now. And you're curious about this, and you're allowing some of that feeling to be there. So you're just sitting with it. It's almost like a hurting child comes to you, and you're like this big nurturing presence, this good mother, and you hold them as if you love them very much. So it's you as the presence and you as the feeling that needs some witnessing and some holding. And just breathe with that. This is what I call being with. So there's this being with certain parts of yourself that maybe some time you've rejected in the past. You've rejected the hurting or the scared part of yourself, maybe. So we're not doing that now. We're holding that. We're giving that some tenderness. And I'm staying with this, kind of repeating myself, because I want you to stay with this feeling longer than you ordinarily would. I said earlier that most parents can only just stay with a crying child just a certain amount of time, and then they get frustrated and they want it to stop. So we're increasing our capacity to just be with this hurting inner place, or scared, hurting, scared, upset, that sort of thing. Notice your breathing. Notice yourself allowing a feeling or a body sensation. And see if it changes. If you sit with a feeling, sometimes it'll change to something else. Maybe it'll get bigger. Maybe it'll get a little bit more spacious itself. Maybe it'll kind of dissolve. Just see what happens. We're being curious here. But basically, you're holding this part of yourself and you're feeling with this part. Something happened in that incident that you started out with. And you can kind of see, as the witness, you can see why you would be upset by this. You're not the kind of parent that says, get over it. You're the kind of parent that says, oh, yeah, I get it. You're also not the kind of parent that says, it'll be all right. No, necessarily. I mean, you can say that, but we're really not talking about anything other than the way it is right now. The way it is right now is painful, but you yourself, as the person who feels upset, you're all right. It's like you're saying, I'm here with you. You're not alone in this feeling. Of course, it's you and yourself. So we're strengthening your relationship with yourself. And if the feelings do get kind of intense, we don't want to let that go very far then. If they do get intense, I would want you to open your eyes and look around and actually describe something in the room so that you're not back in that feeling anymore. You can pull yourself out of being with a feeling at any time. I want you to trust that you can do this yourself. So you're basically just with yourself, letting that feeling, that hurting part of you felt, letting that feeling move a little bit, letting the energy move. If it's a childhood feeling of hurt or disappointment, that sort of thing, you may have some stuck energy in your emotional being, energy that just got shut down because it wasn't safe to feel, like it wasn't safe to cry and feel all your tears. But now you can let yourself feel a little more of that. So it's like you're moving the energy that needed to be completed and moved way back a long time ago. Or if it's an adult example, you're moving that energy, but it's usually related to some other energy from childhood that needs moving. So every time you get upset and you consciously be with yourself and move some of that energy, which means feel it, could be crying, could be shaking, or could be just relaxing into the feeling a little bit more. You're doing self-healing. You're moving stuck energy so it can complete, so that it's not hanging around and dictating your behavior as an adult. Not causing you to rigidly control your feelings. Or on the opposite side of rigid would be hysterically spewing out your feelings. Either one is not what's good for you right now. It's holding space for those feelings to move. But because you feel safe with yourself, the feelings actually can move in an appropriate way. Like tears, like crying would be one example. So we've spent a little time here with this memory, with this hurting part of ourselves, or this not too happy part of ourselves. So I want you to get ready to bring this to a close with some simple kind of inward act of connection, whatever that inward act of connection. Maybe it's imagining yourself hugging this part of yourself. Maybe you actually do put your hand on your body in a certain place, hug yourself. I tend to like to put my arms around myself and just that anchors in that feeling that I'm here for you. Or maybe it's words. Maybe you need to say some reassuring words to this part of yourself. Now just take a few more deep breaths and get ready to come back to this room. But take your time, because this last part, you may need quite a bit of time with this. So just keep your eyes closed if you want to, and take all the time you need. Different people may come out of this at different times, and that's okay. But when you're fully back, maybe shake your body a little bit, stretch a little bit to just bring yourself out of the exercise and back into a space where we can share a little bit here in this group. Now we'll say that there are various scripts for this exercise, both in the book 5-Minute Relationship Repair and my more recent book, From Triggered to Tranquil. So you could take yourself through this if you just read the book, or you could go to YouTube and replay this guided practice that I just led, because pretty soon you'll get it. So you don't need a script. You'll just find your own way to do this. But the idea is that you repeat this, not just every time after you get triggered by somebody, although that's a good time, but sometimes right there when you're in the triggered situation, you don't feel safe enough to do this. So you wait till you get in a safe place later on in the day or this evening, and then you do this practice with yourself. And it really does help you be more accepting of emotional pain. I'm not one of these people that thinks that we should all go around protecting each other from difficult information. I think we all need to up our ability to handle unexpected negative events and process our emotional pain more efficiently, but compassionately. So that's what I'm about here. And we can learn to do this. And I mean, that was such a simple exercise in some ways, but I'd like to hear where some of you went with that, because I have no idea, of course, how it was for each of you. So Karen, would you share how it was for you doing this exercise?
It was confirming. And it was helpful because I'm revisiting something that happened less than a week ago that was really scary and sad and stunning. And what I just wrote down is emotional pain's a part of life, and we're upping our capacity to hold space for it. And that's what happened for me, is I find a little more room and a little more room and a little more room inside myself to hold the space for what happened. And I've been working on the inner reparenting for a long time now, and so I can revert to it pretty easy. And what's interesting is that what just came up now is there's what happened to me as a child, and there's also the experience I just had as an adult in real time. And I'm holding space for both of them.
Good. A lot of times, whatever happens in the immediate trigger reaction with somebody else is a doorway. Once you let yourself take some time with the adult interaction that was painful, it seems to become a doorway to, oh, this is something that has happened several important times in my life. I didn't get this particular need met. And then you can hold space for your wounded child who actually didn't get certain needs met. There's usually a connection between what bothers me today and what I didn't get back then. Any other comments? Just got a couple more minutes. Yes, Brajesh.
Hi, Susan. Yeah,
Hi.
I went to my childhood, and I felt a lot of compassion for my mother for
Oh.
the way I thought she treated me versus she was doing the best that she knew how to do, and who knows what happened in her life to treat me that way. And so I felt at peace that that I can feel
Yes.
the emotions and that I'm safe. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah. Once we do learn how to self-parent, it does it opens up the space for let's say being a little more generous about our expectations of what other people should be doing for us. Okay, so let's see, and Angela has a hand up, so I'd like to hear from you, Angela.
Thanks, Susan. It's so wonderful to be here with you. And thanks everybody for the shares. They really deeply meet my needs for transparency and vulnerability. I have done like a lot of this work with myself. And it's hard because I have like really emotionally neglected parts. And today, I was even sitting with these parts this morning before our time today, but when you said, Susan, about, I can't remember, make the connection or physically see how to make a connection before we leave, that was so helpful. And I just could feel my embrace. Like I was asking my parts, like, is that okay? Because they feel so neglected. They're just so, like frozen. It's so deep, the pain. But that embrace is like so helpful. And I'm curious, I know we're out of time, but just any more on neglect, because it's such a curious developmental issue, besides even
Oh, yes.
abuse. Or I'm very fascinated because of my own story, but just with clients, with curious what you might say about that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll say a little bit, 30 seconds worth of a little riff on neglect. A lot of us who were neglected, we learned not to expect much of the environment. And we actually may have learned, and it's kind of like learning the wrong thing, that we're the best protectors of ourselves. And so we don't let it in from other people. So if you know that you experience neglect, just be real tender toward, I'm going to say, the part of you that mistrusts anything coming in. And, Angela, when you said, like the part that's like protected, the neglected part's kind of protecting from expecting something that they're not going to get. And so being gentle, like what Angela said, asking the part, or if you know that this part of you that like you're trying to give it love, like a much loved child, but the child is stiffening up. I mean, you've seen little kids. I know one little girl who, I think she's got a wonderful mother, but she just stiffens up around any loving gestures from her mother. Okay, something's going on there. So if you find yourself kind of stiffening up in any way, just be gentle when you try to give that part of yourself hugs. But apparently it worked for you, Angela, today. You were ready. You've done a lot of pre-work on this. So just thank you for that last comment. And thank you to everyone today for being with us. Each of us has such a different, we all have the same emotional needs, but we each have our own unique ways of working with this particular exercise. So I really appreciated hearing from some of you about this. Okay, so I will be resuming these in September, these free coaching calls, and I'll be resuming my newsletter in September. And I'll let you know how the summer goes with not doing any work at all. You understand, I'm not going to be doing any work at all, just to see what that's like. So for me, that's one of the developmental tasks of the final stage of life, is to try something that you haven't tried before. see what happens. Okay, thanks for being here today.
Thank
Bye.
you, Susan.
Best wishes on your journey.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Yeah, thank you,
Thanks so
Susan.
much,
That-
Susan.
Have a bitchin' summer.
I will.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Look forward to seeing you in July on the STOA.
Yeah, come on to the STOA. Go to the stoa.com and you'll find the link for that. It's free. Okay.
What is a STOA?
It's a platform where smart people exchange ideas.
How do you spell
Most
that?
of them are too smart for me. I never know what they're talking about.
How do you spell that?
STOA.
STOA. Okay, just like it sounds.
Mhm.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a cool platform.
mhm.
But as I said, a lot of it's over my head because it's these young people. Hearing myself talk now. But
Well, you're very young at heart,
try to
so
keep up,
yeah, yeah,
but if you come to mine, you'll understand mine.
yeah.
Okay. Bye.
This was,
Bye-bye.
I wanted to say, Susan, this was so good.
Thanks.
I'm thinking of recommending this to some of my clients
Sure.
as an introduction to what we needed as children,
Yeah.
so that I don't, because it was just such a beautiful encapsulation of those core needs and then how to go in and meet ourselves. I mean,
I
that's
think
just,
it's great to
powerful
run
lesson,
things
yeah.
like this to clients.
yeah, because this is a YouTube, right? So it's
On
available.
YouTube, it's public. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
public
yeah.
domain at this point. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I just wanted to say thank you because that was absolutely,
And if
Very
any of them read books or listen to audiobooks, my book.
I already recommend the
my
book.
book From
So
Triggered to Tranquil.
yep, that one I recommend a lot. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, and it's on audiobook too.
Yes, that's how I'm,
Okay.
thank you.
Bye
Mhm.
for now.